Let's get healthy on a Monday. We're talking about football and concussions. Thousands enjoy the sport every weekend, like this Saturday in Eugene when the Ducks took on the Cougars. But you know, sometimes you wonder, what are the long-term concerns for players out there day after day in practice and in the games? Dr. Larry Sherman is a neuroscientist with OHSU. He's presenting a Science on Tap in Vancouver this week on Wednesday night at the Keegan's Theater about this very subject and, you know, asking the question, should we be playing football? Nice to have you here, Dr. Sherman.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So answer that right off the top. Should we be playing football? Well,
I'm a huge football fan, so my immediate answer would be yes. But I'm thinking that we need to re-evaluate, especially youth sports and what we're doing in youth sports. The concussions that we're seeing in kids these days, they're getting worse in some respects, and it's not just football, it's any sport. And we now know some things about the adolescent brain that we didn't know before. It's really quite different from the adult brain. And those differences may be making our youth brain really more susceptible to the effects of concussion.
So you're more concerned about a concussion in a youth participant than you are an older participant. Why is that? Does it do a different damage to the brain? Yeah,
so it turns out an adolescent brain is still a brain in progress. It's not done yet. And in particular, something that I study in my own lab, it's a substance called myelin. It kind of insulates our nerve cells. It's not quite finished yet in the adolescent brain. And as a result, it kind of makes the adolescent brain more susceptible to the types of damage you see in a concussion or any kind of traumatic brain injury.
Should mention we have a softball helmet here, not a football helmet.
That's
because
right.
You happen to be a softball coach. Nice to know that you're involved in youth sports and out there watching out for kids who are playing. What about the equipment do we need to know?
Well, I'll tell you, the interesting thing about all sports is that we didn't used to have helmets. I mean, people used to play without them. And now we have helmets that are getting better and better in terms of the design, both in softball, but also in football. But the problem is, you still have this problem when you have an impact, it will slosh the brain one direction. And the brain, of course, is surrounded by our skull, but it's also surrounded by this fluid. And the brain will go to the front of the skull, cause some damage. And then, of course, there's the reverse. When the head goes back, now the other side of the brain is getting hit. And these helmets only do so much to prevent any kind of damage along those lines from happening. If you get hit on the side, there's also other things that happen in terms of the way the skull moves, the way the brain moves, and that can also cause tearing of the nerve cells. And that's what happens when you get CTE. A lot of that continuous damage will result in a long-term neurological disorder called CTE.
So scary for a parent when you hear that, and you don't want your child to be overly concerned when they go out there. What do you say to a parent? I mean, I know as a youth football parent, there's been an exodus from the sport in terms of numbers on the teams keep dropping. What do you say to a parent?
Well, I think, again, we don't know all the things that happen in CTE. We know that the more concussions we have, the more likely you are to get it. But I also think if we can start revising some of the ways we play these sports, especially at the youth level, the younger kids, we might have a way to prevent more concussions and prevent these kinds of injuries from happening in the first place.
For example, what would be a rule you could change in youth football that would make you feel better?
I think we just avoid those kinds of hard tackles. Make sure that the kids aren't using their heads to tackle, and just the helmets have to be there because you can still have skull fractures, and that's what this is really good at preventing. But if you can avoid any kind of head-to-head contact or head-to-body contact, that's the best approach.
Which is difficult because that is at the core of football. But then you look at other sports, you know, in soccer, heading the ball. I know they've made some, you know, rules to try and protect children.
Absolutely.
In that respect.
And you see these same kinds of injuries in soccer. You see it in hockey a lot. But even softball, I mean, if you get hit the side of a head, the ball very hard, even with your helmet on, you can still have a very good chance of getting a concussion. It's all about being careful, but changing rules maybe to make sure that you maximize the chance that this doesn't happen.
All right, if you'd like to learn more from Dr. Larry Sherman, a neuroscientist at OHSU, he will have that presentation Wednesday night at the Keegan's Theater in Vancouver. Thanks for coming in today, Dr.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.